April 30th, 1943, the coast of Huelva, Spain. A local sardine fisherman is rowing his small wooden boat through the morning mist when he spots something bobbing in the freezing Atlantic swell. He rows closer, the water lapping against the hull, and finds a man floating face down. The dead man is wearing the pristine uniform of a British Royal Marine. A yellow life jacket is strapped to his chest. But what catches the fisherman's eye is not the uniform. It is the black leather briefcase chained directly to the corpse's trench coat belt. Inside that briefcase sit top-secret documents, letters from Allied High Command detailing a massive impending invasion of Greece. Within hours, Spanish authorities will pull the body from the water. Within days, Nazi spies will photograph the documents. Within weeks, Adolf Hitler will read those intercepted letters and completely reposition his entire European defense force, moving entire panzer divisions away from the real target. But here is the detail that the greatest intelligence network on Earth failed to realize. The man in the water is not a British officer. He is not a courier. He is a homeless, destitute Welshman who died of a rat poison in an abandoned London warehouse. He has never served in the military. He has never held a secret document. Major William Martin is a ghost crafted from thin air. How did a team of eccentric British intelligence officers use a nameless corpse to deceive the most ruthless military machine in history? And what happens when a single overzealous Spanish coroner threatens to expose the entire deception during a midnight autopsy? By the spring of 1943, the Second World War has reached a suffocating stalemate. The Allies have driven the Axis powers out of North Africa, and Winston Churchill knows exactly what must happen next. They must strike a soft underbelly of Europe. The target is obvious to everyone: Sicily. The island sits right off the toe of Italy, a perfect stepping stone for a full-scale invasion of the European mainland. It is so obvious, in fact, that Churchill privately remarks that anybody but a fool would know it is Sicily, and Adolf Hitler is no fool. The German High Command is already fortifying the island, pouring in troops, heavy artillery, and armored divisions. If the Allies launch a massive amphibious assault on Sicily while the Germans are waiting for them, it will not be an invasion, it will be a slaughter. The beaches will turn red, the war will drag on for years, and millions more will die. The British need a miracle. They need Hitler to look the other way. They need the Germans to believe with absolute certainty that the invasion is coming hundreds of miles to the east, in Greece. But you cannot simply leak a rumor to a spy and expect Hitler to move an army. The Germans are paranoid, meticulous, and brilliant at sniffing out counterintelligence. They will only believe it if they discover the secret themselves, through an accident so perfectly tragic that it cannot possibly be a setup. Deep inside the windowless basement, room 13 of the British Admiralty in London, two men sit across from each other, smoking cigarettes and staring at a blank wall. Their names are Ewan Montagu and Charles Cholmondeley. They are part of the 20 Committee, Britain's elite counterintelligence unit. Cholmondeley is a towering, nearsighted flight lieutenant with a brilliant, eccentric mind. Montagu is a sharp, aristocratic naval intelligence officer who views deception as a high-stakes chess match. They recall an old memo, a document written years earlier by another intelligence officer named Ian Fleming, the man who would later create James Bond. The document was called the Trout Memo, comparing deception to fly fishing. You do not force the fish to bite. You present a lure so irresistible that the fish convinces itself to strike. One of the ideas buried in that memo is simple but incredibly macabre. Take a corpse, dress it as a courier, plant fake invasion plans on it, and drop it in the ocean near enemy territory. Let the enemy find the body and steal the plans. Montagu and Cholmondeley decide to make the lure. They call it Operation Mincemeat. But executing the plan is a logistical nightmare. They need a body, not just any body, but a very specific type of corpse. It has to look like a man who died in an airplane crash over the ocean, succumbed to exposure, and drowned. They cannot simply use a soldier who died in combat, because combat wounds would be instantly recognized by a competent coroner. They cannot use someone who died of a prolonged illness, because the physical deterioration would be obvious. And they can't ask for a volunteer, because you can't ask a man to die just so you can use his corpse. They begin quietly scouring London's morgues, speaking in hushed tones to trusted coroners. For weeks, they find nothing. The bodies are all wrong. Then, in January 1943, they find him. His name is Glinderer Michael. He's 34 years old, a drifter from South Wales with no family, no friends, and no money. He wandered the freezing streets of wartime London until, driven by starvation and despair, he ingested a paste made from phosphorus, a lethal rat poison. It was a slow, agonizing death. Because phosphorus kills by shutting down the liver and degrading the body in a way that mimics the fluid accumulation of drowning, the coroner assures Montagu that if the Spanish doctors aren't looking too closely, the fluid in Glinderer Michael's lungs will pass for seawater. They have their body. Now they must build his soul. A corpse with fake documents is just a piece of meat. To fool Nazi intelligence, to fool Hitler himself, the body has to be a real person. The Germans are thorough. They will investigate everything. They will look for inconsistencies in his pockets, his clothes, his history. If he's a blank slate carrying the most important documents in the war, the Germans will smell a trap. Montagu and Cholmondeley begin crafting a human being from scratch. They name him Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. They give him the rank of acting major, senior enough to be entrusted with sensitive documents, but not so senior that his existence would be widely known by enemy spies. But military ID is not enough. A man is defined by the trivial, messy details of his life, the pocket letter. They sit in their basement office for days arguing over who Major William Martin is. What kind of cigarettes does he smoke? What does he care about? Who does he love? They decide he's a bit careless, slightly disorganized, but fiercely loved. They invent a fiancée for him. Her name is Pam. They ask a young secretary in the MI5 office to provide a photograph of herself wearing a swimsuit, something a young officer would carry in his wallet. They have another female operative write agonizingly real love letters filled with mundane details about wartime life, longing, and affection. But they push the psychological manipulation further. They need to prove Martin is a real, flawed human. They forge a letter from his bank manager demanding payment for an overdraft of nearly £80. They create a receipt from a London jeweler for a diamond engagement ring, unpaid, proving he just proposed to Pam. They even include 2 ticket stubs from a West End theater, showing he took Pam to a show on his last night in London before flying out to his supposed death. They even include a stern, slightly irritable letter from his father, written by Montagu himself, complaining about legal matters and the boy's careless spending. Every piece of paper is meticulously aged. They rub the letters on their trousers to simulate wear. They carry his wallet in their pockets for weeks so it shapes to a human body. They use real matches, real keys, a real silver cross necklace. They dress Glinderer Michael in a tailored Royal Marine uniform, but because rigor mortis has set in, getting the boots onto his stiff, frozen feet takes 3 grown men pulling with all their strength. They have to find a real officer with the same build and photograph him for the fake military ID card, ensuring the face is a close enough match to the decomposing man on the slab. Finally, they prepare the trap, the fake documents. The letters cannot look like an obvious operational order. That would be too convenient. Instead, they draft personal correspondence between high-ranking generals. A letter from Lieutenant General Sir Archibald Nye to General Sir Harold Alexander. The letter casually discusses the upcoming invasion of Greece as a matter of absolute fact, while jokingly mentioning Sicily as a mere decoy target. The tone is perfectly crafted. It sounds like 2 aristocrats discussing the war over brandy. It is brilliant. To ensure the briefcase stays with the body in the rough ocean, they use a leather-covered chain wrapping it around the corpse's trench coat belt. Now they must deliver their ghost to the enemy. April 19, 1943. A massive steel cylinder packed with dry ice to preserve the body is loaded onto the British submarine HMS Seraph in Scotland. The crew is told it contains a highly sensitive meteorological device. Only the captain, Bill Jewell, knows he is transporting a dead homeless man to the coast of Spain. The submarine glides silently out of the harbor, diving deep into the Atlantic. For 10 days, they sail south, beneath enemy radar, towards the Spanish coast. The destination is Huelva, a small coastal town in southwestern Spain. Why Huelva? Because Spain is technically neutral, but it is swarming with Nazi spies. Specifically, Huelva is home to an aggressive, highly efficient German intelligence agent named Adolf Klaus. The British know that if a body washes up in Huelva, the so-called neutral Spanish authorities will immediately inform Klaus. It's the perfect drop zone. April 30th, 4:15 in the morning. The HMS Seraph surfaces just a mile off the Spanish coast. The night is pitch black, the sea choppy.
Captain Jewel orders everyone below deck except his officers. They open the heavy steel cylinder. The dry ice has sublimated, leaving a haunting, freezing fog rolling over the deck. They pull Glyndor Michael out. His face is pale, his limbs stiff. Jewel reads a brief passage from the Book of Common Prayer, committing the body to the deep. They inflate the yellow life jacket, attach the briefcase, and gently push Major William Martin into the freezing Atlantic water. They reverse the submarine's engines, creating a wake that will push the body directly toward the shoreline. Then they vanish beneath the waves. Hours later, the sardine fisherman finds him. The trap is sprung. Now the waiting begins, and the psychological warfare shifts from the planning room to the real world. When the fisherman brings the body to port, the Spanish military immediately takes custody. The British intelligence officers in London are biting their nails. They have to play their part perfectly. If they do not act like they have lost something catastrophic, the Germans will not believe the documents are real. So, the British Admiralty begins sending frantic, highly classified messages to their naval attaché in Madrid, demanding that the briefcase be recovered immediately at all costs. They send these messages using a cipher they know the Germans have already cracked. They want the Nazis to hear their panic. In Spain, the tension reaches a breaking point. A Spanish naval judge orders an autopsy on the body. This is the moment Operation Mincemeat could unravel entirely. If the Spanish coroner cuts open Glyndor Michael and realizes the body has been dead for months, preserved in dry ice and poisoned rather than drowned, he will alert his superiors, and the deception will die on the table. The British vice consul in Huelva, a man named F.K. Hazeldine, rushes to the morgue. The room smells of formaldehyde and decay. The Spanish doctor, Eduardo del Torno, stands over the corpse with a scalpel. Hazeldine has to stop him from looking too closely, but he cannot appear desperate. Using every ounce of diplomatic charm and subtle intimidation he possesses, Hazeldine complains about the terrible smell and the heat. He reminds the doctor that Major Martin is a Catholic, pointing to the silver cross on his chest, and suggests that a prolonged invasive autopsy would be deeply disrespectful to an Allied officer who clearly drowned in a tragic crash. Dr. Del Torno hesitates. He looks at the ID, the uniform, the terrible state of the body. He decides a full autopsy is unnecessary. He writes down the cause of death as asphyxiation through immersion in the sea. The British have dodged a massive bullet. But the briefcase is still in Spanish hands, and Spanish intelligence has deep friendly ties with the German Abwehr, the Nazi military intelligence service. Enter Karl Erich Kuhlenthal, a senior German spy stationed in Spain. Kuhlenthal hears a whisper about a British officer washing ashore with a locked briefcase. He wants it. He demands it. He pressures his Spanish contacts relentlessly. For days, a shadowy bureaucratic tug-of-war takes place in Madrid. The Spanish want to maintain their neutrality, but the Germans are offering massive bribes and political pressure. Finally, the Spanish intelligence officers cave, but they must be subtle. They cannot just hand the letters over. They have to return them to the British eventually, and the British will check if the wax seals have been broken. In a dark room in Madrid, a Spanish secret police expert carefully extracts the letters. He uses a specialized technique, inserting a thin cylindrical probe into the envelope flap, rolling the paper tightly around the stick and pulling it out without breaking the red wax seals. It is a painstakingly slow, agonizing process. One tear, one cracked seal, and the British will know the letters have been read, which means the Germans will know the British know, rendering the intelligence useless. They extract the letters flawlessly. They dry them, photograph every single page, and carefully roll them back into the envelopes. The photographs are immediately handed to Kuhlenthal. The German spy takes one look at the personal letters, the theater tickets, the angry note from the father, and the high-level invasion plans. He is completely, utterly fooled. Kuhlenthal sends an urgent encrypted transmission directly to Berlin. He states that the intelligence is absolutely authentic. The detail of the pocket litter has done its job. The Germans cannot fathom that the British would go to such lengths to invent a dead man's life just to deliver fake papers. The psychological manipulation is absolute. Days later, the Spanish return the briefcase and the body to the British. Major William Martin is buried with full military honors in a sun-drenched cemetery in Huelva. An honor guard fires a salute. A wreath is laid on his grave.
The Spanish authorities assure the British that the briefcase was never opened, but Montagu and Cholmondeley had placed a single microscopic eyelash inside one of the letters before sealing it. When the briefcase arrives back in London, they open the envelope. The eyelash is gone. They immediately send a coded message to Winston Churchill, who is currently in Washington meeting with President Roosevelt. The telegram reads, "Mincemeat swallowed rod, line, and sinker." But the true test is not whether the spies believe it. The true test is whether Adolf Hitler believes it. In Berlin, the photographs of the documents are placed on Hitler's desk. The Führer reads them personally. He has always been paranoid about Greece and the Balkans, fearing the Allies will strike there to cut off Germany's vital oil supply lines. The documents validate his deepest, most ingrained fears. When an arrogant dictator is presented with evidence that confirms what he already suspects, he doesn't question it, he acts on it. Hitler completely overrides the warnings of the Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini, who insists Sicily is the obvious target. Hitler issues a sweeping, immediate directive. He orders the entire defense strategy of southern Europe to be completely upended. The sheer scale of the German reaction is staggering. Hitler orders the 1st Panzer Division, a massive, lethal armored force, to travel all the way from France to Greece. He commands the installation of new minefields off the Greek coast. He transfers entire squadrons of torpedo boats from Sicily to the Aegean Sea. He even pulls 2 vital armored divisions away from the Eastern Front in Russia, exactly when the German army is preparing for the massive Battle of Kursk, and sends them to the Balkan. He strips the defenses of Sicily bare, convinced that any attack there is a mere feint, a trick to draw his forces away from the real invasion in Greece. Hitler has swallowed the bait entirely. The dead homeless man from London is now dictating the movement of the German army. July 10th, 1943, Operation Husky begins. The greatest armada ever assembled up to that point in history appears off the coast of Sicily. Hundreds of thousands of American, British, and Canadian troops storm the beaches. They expect a bloodbath. They expect the full, terrifying might of the German war machine waiting for them in the hills. Instead, the resistance is shockingly light. The beaches are taken with minimal casualties. The German defenders who are there are completely overwhelmed because their reinforcements are sitting hundreds of miles away in Greece, staring at an empty ocean, waiting for an invasion that will never come. Even when the Allies are pouring into Sicily, Hitler refuses to believe it. For full 2 weeks after the invasion begins, he insists it's a diversionary tactic. He keeps his forces pinned in Greece, paralyzed by the words of a dead man. The capture of Sicily gives the Allies a crucial foothold in Europe. It leads directly to the collapse of Mussolini's government. It forces Germany into a defensive war on 2 fronts, draining their resources and accelerating the end of the Third Reich. Military historians estimate that Operation Mincemeat saved the lives of thousands of Allied soldiers. It changed the entire trajectory of the Second World War, and it was all because of a ghost. After the war, Ewan Montagu wrote a book about the operation, but the true identity of Major William Martin remained a closely guarded state secret for decades. The British government feared the public backlash if people realized they had taken a civilian's corpse without permission to use as a weapon of war. It wasn't until the late 1990s that the truth finally came to light, and a small inscription was added to the gravestone in Huelva, Spain. Beneath the name of Major William Martin, the stone now reads, Glyndor Michael, served as Major William Martin. Think about the profound, haunting irony of this story. Glyndor Michael lived a life of absolute anonymity and agonizing hardship. He was invisible to society, a man who had no money, no home, and no power. He died alone in the dark, believing he had left zero impact on the world. He was the definition of forgotten. Yet in death, he became the most important officer in the Allied forces. His lifeless body outmaneuvered the greatest military intelligence network on the planet. He infiltrated the mind of Adolf Hitler. He saved thousands of young men who never knew his name, allowing them to go home to their families, have children, and live the lives that he was denied.
Wars are won by generals, by steel, and by overwhelming force. But the turning point of the bloodiest conflict in human history was not a tank battle or a bombing raid. It was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation built around a theater ticket, a fake unpaid jewelry bill, and the silent, frozen body of a homeless man who changed the world without ever firing a single shot.